Is my audio and video clear?
Clear, sir.
Thank you. I am sharing my screen now. So this is our second weekend session. In the previous class, we finished with these assumption questions. So today we are going to go ahead and solve some long passages and understand the concepts of tone of the passage. Just a minute. Okay, fine. Guys, is this our second class or third class today? Second class, right? Okay, thank you. So in the last thing we did was assumptions, correct? We just finished assumptions. Is that correct? Okay, great. Fine. So now you see this class material 2 and 3, this one. Okay, so this is what we are going to do today. 2 and 3 and the next one, class material 4. So here there is a passage. It's about India and India's perception of Russia. There are a few questions with it. The fourth question is about the tone of the passage. So before we solve it, I will explain to you what tones are and why it's important to know about them. Even though mostly this kind of question will not come for you, but still it's important for you to learn the tone. Then this section has 4 passages, lengthy but important passages because they are from previous years and they are very important to learn concepts. And then we have this class material 4, which is again I think 5 passages. We'll do this in the second half today, and this will complete our conceptual learning, so that next class onwards we can start focusing on the shorter kind of passages, which will then become easy for you, and they are more important because most of your passages will be short ones. So yeah, please open that 80-page document that has been shared with you, right? Please open that, and I have given these tones on the 12th page. I hope everybody has the document, the 80-page document, comprehension document. You have it? It's been shared with you, the 80-page document. Yeah. Okay, please open that, come to page 12. Open it and come to page 12. So these are the various tones, okay? See, a tone is basically the attitude of the author or the style of writing adopted by the author. And the reason why it's important to learn because it gives you a better understanding of the passage and it helps you identify the assumptions of the author better. and also helps you identify the main purpose or the primary purpose or the central theme of the passage better. Because once you know the tone of the author, you know whether he's being funny or serious or describing something or giving their own opinion, and it's easier to identify their assumptions. So these are your basic tones. Descriptive. Some passages are descriptive in nature, which means that they deal with facts and figures. Okay, these are also called informative or explanatory. Okay, informative or explanatory or expository or narrative. Okay, they are passages that tell a story. Okay, so passages that deal with facts are called any of these: descriptive or informative or explanatory. Analytical passages are those that involve facts and also involve analysis. Okay, also involve some analysis. For example, that Britain and Japan passage that we did in the previous session, it analyzed why the Japanese are better than the British in the electronics industry. So that was analytical. Persuasive passages are those which present facts, analyze, and also give an opinion, such as the retail FDI passage that we did in the previous class. Okay, the author was giving his own opinion. So that was persuasive. Why do we call it persuasive? Because when the author gives his own opinion, you are either going to agree or disagree with the author. You're either going to agree, yeah, this is okay. I know, like we had the first class earlier, so probably you missed it. So yeah. So when the author gives his opinion, you will either agree or disagree with the author, but you will form some opinion of your own. So the author has persuaded you to form an opinion. So because of that, these passages are called persuasive. Also, abstract passages are persuasive, like passages where the author gives their opinion on some abstract concept, such as, if the author describes what is patriotism or what is freedom in their own words, that is called persuasive. Any abstract passage written by somebody is persuasive because it is written just from their point of view. So whatever is written is their opinion and it becomes persuasive. Critical passages are those where either the author is criticizing somebody, that is called critical, or he presents a complete appraisal or a complete evaluation of a topic by presenting facts, analysis, his own view and a counter view, what other people may think. So presents the complete picture to you, an unbiased, complete review. That kind of a passage is called a critical passage. So these are the four primary tones. Then other than that, if the author is being funny, we say that the tone is humorous, funny. If he is being funny but in a negative way, dry humor, that is called sarcastic. If the author gives you a positive outlook for the future, we say that he is being optimistic or hopeful. On the other hand, if he gives you a negative outlook for the future, we say that he is being pessimistic or gloomy or dark. If the author is praising someone in the passage, we say that the tone is laudatory. To laud somebody means to praise them or applauding. On the other hand, if the author is asking you a lot of questions or making you think, it is said that the tone is thought-provoking. If the author raises a lot of doubts, the tone is said to be doubtful or skeptical. Such as that retail FDI passage, the author is very skeptical of what the government is trying to do. So the tone becomes skeptical in that. He is very doubtful of what the government is doing. So a passage can have multiple tones, An analytical passage can be skeptical. He is drawing an analysis and being skeptical. So that overlap will be there. Deferential or agreeable. So if the author is agreeing with somebody's point of view throughout the passage, basically agreeing with somebody. It is called to defer to somebody means to agree with them. So agreeable or deferential. For example, if I write a passage on Mahatma Gandhi and I mention whatever he said or did and I agree with it throughout the passage, my tone is said to be deferential. If I'm highlighting a lot of contradictions in the passage, or if I'm writing in a way that itself is contradictory, that is said to be paradoxical. Okay, a paradox is a contradiction. Say, for example, if you see me studying throughout the day for the exam, throughout the year, every day I'm studying full day, and then I go and fail in the exam, it creates a paradox, which means it was unexpected. So if the author is highlighting paradoxes in the passage, the tone is said to be paradoxical. Idiomatic means writing in a particular style. So if he's using some particular phrases or expressions or some grammatical style belonging to a particular time period, or if he's writing using very complex grammar, very complex words, employing a lot of quotations, or writing in any particular style, like writing in a classical style, writing in a very rigid modern style, the tone is said to be idiomatic. So these are your various tones. I'll repeat them once more. Tone can be descriptive. Descriptive passages are those. Are you able to follow? Please type clear if you're able to get some idea, if you're able to understand what I'm telling. Fine. I'll just repeat it once. Then we'll go ahead to the passage. So descriptive passages are those that are fact-based. They're also called informative passages or explanatory or expository or narrative. If the author presents their analysis as well, it's called analytical. If he gives his opinion along with the analysis or tries to explain an abstract concept, it is called persuasive. If he criticizes somebody or evaluates a topic from every angle, gives you an unbiased review of that by presenting facts, analyzing, giving his own opinion, giving the counter opinion as well, it is called critical. If he is being funny, it is humorous. If he is employing negative humor, it is called sarcastic. If a positive outlook for the future is presented, the tone is optimistic. If a negative outlook is presented, the tone is pessimistic. If the author praises someone, the tone is said to be applauding or laudatory. If he asks you questions or makes you think, it is thought-provoking. If he is expressing a lot of doubts, it is skeptical. If he agrees with somebody's point of view throughout the passage, it is deferential or agreeable. If he is highlighting contradictions or writing in a contradictory manner, it is paradoxical. If he is adopting a particular style of writing or using very complex vocabulary or grammar structures or quotations, it is called idiomatic. I hope these tones are clear to you. And now we come to these passages. So if this is his first passage, it talks about India's opinion of the Soviet in contrast with other countries' opinions of the Soviet. So you will have, there are how many questions with this? 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 4 questions, and the passage itself is a little lengthy. How much time do you think you need? Can you type and tell me how much time you need for this passage? So we have a range of 5 to 15 minutes. Okay, just take the number of questions, multiply by 2. 8 minutes. 8 minutes will be enough for this. Okay. And this passage 2, Himalayan ecosystem. This one is also said, this is from CSAT 2017. It's a very good passage. Okay. It will it tests your concepts properly. This one has 4 questions as well. So for this also 18 minutes. So for passages 1 and 2 combined, or we'll do one by one, not combined. Just solve passage 1. Your time limit is 8 minutes. Okay. Just solve passage 1. Time limit is 8 minutes. If you want, I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes extra. Please solve this. Do passage 1. You can start. Okay, so we have taken 8 minutes time plus 2 minutes extra time as well. I hope everybody has finished by now. Everyone's done by now. Let's discuss it. Okay, so see passage 1. First, I'll explain the passage to you. See if you did not understand anything in this. It is given that the most important reason for this state of affairs, perhaps, is that India was the only country in the world to truly recognize the achievements of the Soviet Union, rather than merely focus on the debilitating faults. So debilitating means crippling, something that handicaps you. The crippling faults that communism brought to its people. So India was the only country in the world to recognize what they achieved, rather than just focus on the faults of communism. The people of India realized that the achievement of 100% literacy in a country much larger than its own, and with a similarly complicated ethnic and religious groupings, the rapid industrialization of a nation that was a primarily agrarian society, means agricultural, based on agriculture, when the Bolshevik Revolution took place in 1917. So till then, Russia was mainly agrarian. The attendant revolutionary steps in science and technology, attendant means accompany, simultaneous, revolutionary steps in science and technology, the accessibility of healthcare that is primable according to Western standards, perhaps, but not according to Indian ones, accessibility of healthcare to the general population, and despite prohibition of the government of the time, the vast outpourings in literature, music, art, etc. are momentous and remarkable feats in any country. So these are all the things that India recognized about the Soviets. Starting from here, achievement of 100% literacy till this. These are all the things that the Soviets achieved, which India recognized. In contrast, all that the West focused on, so the only thing that the Western countries focused on were the massive human rights violations by the Soviet state on its people, the deliberate uprooting and mass migrations of ethnic peoples. People is plural for people, like many sets of people are referred to as peoples, from one part of the country to another in the name of industrialization, the end of religion. So these three things were what the West focused on: human rights violations, uprooting and mass migration of people, the end of religion. In short, all the tools of information were employed to condemn the ideology of communism, so much at variance with capitalist thinking. So they denounced communism. They were against communism, which was very different from capitalist thinking, which they were following, where Westerners were following. The difference with the Indian perception, so compared to the West, India's perception was different. And the difference I think here is that while the Indians reacted as negatively to what the Soviet governments did to its people in the name of good governance, so witness the imprisonment of Boris Pasternak and the formation of an international committee to put pressure for his release with Jawaharlal Nehru at its head. So this is an example given when India also reacted negatively to what the Soviets did. And the example is given that when Boris Pasternak went to jail, an international committee was formed to push for his release, and the head of that committee was Jawaharlal Nehru. They took the pain not to condemn the people of that broad country in black and white terms. So Indians took the pain, or took the effort to not condemn the Soviets in black and white terms. Black and white terms means absolute terms. So a person who has black and white thinking means they think in extremes, in absolutes. Either something is completely right or something is completely wrong. Either somebody is completely correct or they are completely wrong. So that is called black and white thinking. Okay, they can't think in between. They understood that mingled in the shades of gray were grains of uniqueness. Now this is a metaphor. Mingled in the shades of gray. So they're saying, right, that instead that we did not have a black and white thinking. So gray is a color in between black and white. So we understood that the Soviets were right in some things and they were wrong in some things. And we thought they were unique. We understood that they were unique. So they understood that mingled in the shades of gray were grains of uniqueness. The Russians have never failed that characteristic in themselves, the characteristic of being unique. They have twice experimented with completely different ideologies, communism and capitalism, both in the space of a century. So they have been communist and they have also been capitalist, and both have been done within the space of 100 years. So that's why they are unique. I hope you have understood the passage. If you have any doubts, please text and ask me, or you can raise your hand and you can ask me. And now we move ahead with the questions. So question number 1, which of the following statements according to the passage is correct? Option A, India took heed of. Took heed of means took notice of the weak faults of Russian policies and systems. So in some cases, India did react negatively, but did we take note of their faults of their policies and systems? This is what the West did, not India. Option B, India seriously commended the achievement of Russia, that is cent% literacy and rapid industrialization. To commend means to praise. So did we? Yes, we did. Cent is 100, centum. Cent% means 100%. So yes, we did this. Option C, the process of industrialization had already started when Russian Revolution took place in 1917. It had not already started. Heed means notice, to notice something, to pay heed to something. Took heed means took notice of. So till 1917, we read that Russia was mainly agrarian. So it cannot be C. Option D, the literature, art and music received a setback during the communist regime in Russia. It did not receive a setback, right? In spite of the ban, people continued to produce. So the correct answer is B. I hope everybody got B. If you have any doubts, please go ahead and ask me. As we are doing the questions, keep asking your doubts. Any doubts with this? Because it had not begun. Russia was mainly agrarian. See here. Russia was a primarily agrarian society when the Bolshevik Revolution took place in 1917. There is no indication in the passage that industrialization had already begun in 1917. It's saying rapid industrialization, that was a primarily agrarian society when the Bolshevik Revolution took place in 1917. So when the Bolshevik Revolution took place in 1917, Russia was primarily an agrarian society, and then rapid industrialization happened. So because of that, C is wrong. I thought you interpreted this as the rapid industrialization happened in 1917. That is not the correct interpretation. Commended means this. See this part? This is all India commending Russia. This entire thing that I've highlighted. Commend means to appreciate. This is all India commending Russia. Is it clear? Question 1, is it clear to everyone? Okay, fine. Then question 2, the West did not focus on. So select the option that is not there in the passage. That will be A. The rapid growth of nuclear weapons in Russia. The West did not focus on this. They focused on B and they focused on C. So obviously cannot be D. The second answer is A. The rapid growth of nuclear weapons in Russia. Everyone got A for the second one? Did everybody get A? Okay, great. Third one, the Indian perception of the USSR was always. So let's check our options. It's not negative. That was the West. Neutral means neither positive nor negative. That's also wrong. India had a favorable impression of Russia. So can't be B. C is counter reactionary, means whenever somebody does something, you react to them by doing something opposite. That is called counter reactionary. That is not the case here. India was just praising Russia for their achievements. So cannot be C. D is applauding. That is correct, because India was the only country who recognized their achievements. So the answer will be D, applauding. Third is D. And the fourth one, the passage is, okay, if descriptive passages deal with facts. Here the author is analyzing as well. The author is giving his own analysis of the difference between Indian perception and Western perception. So can't be A. There is no paradox here, so can't be B. He is analyzing it, yes. So C, analytical is correct. He is not asking you any questions, so it can't be thought-provoking. So fourth is C. A paradox is a contradiction, something that is opposite of your expectation, a contradictory event. Third one, India reacted negatively first. See, they are asking you, perception was always, that was one instance. So it was not counter reaction to West, it was counter reaction to Russia. It was a reaction to Russia. Russia sent Boris Pasternak to jail. So a committee was formed with Jawaharlal Nehru at its head. It was not a reaction to the West. There, India also reacted negatively. The perception was always applauding. That is the best option that you have. See over here. All the tools of information were employed to condemn the ideology of communism. This was done by the West. The difference with the Indian perception is that while we did react negatively, we took the pain to not condemn the people in broad black and white terms. So we understood their peculiarities and their uniqueness. And we commended them on their achievements. So by elimination, D is the best one, applauding. For always, we cannot say counter reactionary. So D is the best option among the choices. There were a few other doubts also. 1 minute, let me see if I covered everything. Yeah, perception is the core meaning. Yes, correct. Did I miss anything? No, descriptive passages deal with just facts. This one has the author's opinion as well. So it's analytical. See. I think I covered all the doubts. Did I miss anything? Any unresolved doubt? Any other doubt? Everyone's clear? Okay, then let's move ahead to passage 2. Let's move ahead with passage 2. Now, this is also 4 questions. So let's take 8 minutes again. So you have to solve passage 2 now. Time limit of 8 minutes. Again, I'll give you a couple of minutes of extra time. But the timer that you should follow is 8 minutes because there are 4 questions, 4 into 2, 8 minutes. Please start this. Please try. Okay, so the time limit is up with 2 minutes of extra time as well. Is anybody still doing it or everyone's done? Anyone who's still doing it? No one's still doing it? Okay, in that case, we'll start discussing this passage. So the author says that the Himalayan ecosystem is highly vulnerable to damage, both due to geological reasons and on account of the stress caused by increased pressure of population, exploitation of natural resources, and other related challenges. So geological means natural reasons, and also because of population and exploitation of resources. These aspects may be exacerbated. To exacerbate something means to make it worse, to increase the rate of doing something in a negative way, due to the impact of climate change. So now he's saying it can be made worse because of climate change. He says that it is possible that climate change may adversely impact the Himalayan ecosystem through increased temperature altered precipitation patterns. So the rainfall patterns will change because of the temperature, episodes of drought, and biotic influences. So this would not only impact the very sustenance of the indigenous communities, that means very survival of the indigenous communities in uplands, but also the life of downstream dwellers across the country and beyond. Okay. So this would impact everybody, not only the indigenous communities. Indigenous means local, not only the local communities, but also the life of people who are living downstream in the country and even outside the country, across the country and beyond. Therefore, there is an urgent need for giving special attention to sustain the Himalayan ecosystem. Okay, so to make sure that the ecosystem is maintained, this would require conscious efforts for conserving all the representative systems. Further, it needs to be emphasized that the endemics with restricted distribution, an endemic is something that is particular to an area. So the endemics over there, indigenous community means the people living in the Himalayas, the local people of the Himalayas, only the people. Dwellers, people living there. So it does not include flora and fauna. Endemics includes the flora and fauna. I'll explain how. And most often with specialized habitat requirements are among the most vulnerable elements. So who needs a habitat is a place where you live, yeah? So the endemics, with habitat requirements, these are your plants and animals who are particular to the Himalayas, are among the most vulnerable elements. So they are endangered. In this respect, the Himalayan biodiversity hotspot with rich endemic diversity is vulnerable to climate change. So in this respect, that is, your endemics with specialized habitat requirements are vulnerable. Is the Himalayan biodiversity hotspot with, so the Himalayas have rich endemic diversity and they are vulnerable to climate change. Vulnerable means weak or open to attack. The threats include, so how are they vulnerable? The threats include possible loss of genetic resources and species. Okay, so some plants and animals can go extinct, habitats, and concomitantly a decrease in ecosystem services. So some plants and animals can become extinct, species, some habitats can disappear, and the ecosystem services can reduce. Therefore, conservation of endemic elements in representative ecosystems or habitats assumes a great significance. Here, significance means importance, becomes very important while drawing conservation plans for the region. Towards achieving the above, which means towards achieving the above, that is conserving these endemics in the representative ecosystems, we will have to shift towards contemporary conservation approaches. So modern, contemporary means modern. So we have to shift, means so far whatever we were doing, that will not work. So we have to shift towards contemporary approaches, which include a paradigm of landscape level interconnectivity between protected area systems. So which include landscape level. So which means we have to connect these protected areas on land. Okay, connect these protected areas on land. The concept advocates a shift from the species habitat focus. So species habitat focus means till now we were focused on conserving particular species in particular habitats. So moving from a species habitat focus to an inclusive focus on expanding the biogeographic range so that natural adjustments to climate change can proceed without being restrictive. So now we need to move to an inclusive focus, expanding the biogeographic range. So we need to connect these protected areas so natural adjustments can proceed without being restrictive, so that we don't restrict the movement of these plants and animals. So that is the meaning of the passage. Did you find this passage a little tougher than the other ones, or were you able to manage? Questions were difficult. Okay, fine. Let's see. So according to the first question, consider the following statements. According to the passage, the adverse impact of climate change on an ecosystem can be. So what can be the adverse impact? Number one, permanent disappearance of some of its flora and fauna. Permanent disappearance of some of its flora and fauna. Yes, that can happen, right? It's given over here. The threats include possible loss of genetic resources and species. Second one, permanent disappearance of ecosystem itself. Permanent disappearance of ecosystem itself. That is not true, right? They're just saying that there can be a decrease in ecosystem services. There can be a decrease in ecosystem services. So, second is wrong. It's not implied that the ecosystem itself will disappear. Only some services will reduce. So only one. First answer is A, only one. Yeah, vocabulary was a bit difficult. Yeah. Did everybody get the first answer, A? Any doubts with this? Okay, then I guess no doubts with this. And we'll go ahead with the second question. So which one of the following statements best implies the need to shift towards contemporary conservation approaches? So why do we need to shift towards modern approaches? It's given at the end of the passage. Towards achieving the above, we will have to shift towards contemporary conservation approaches. And the concept advocates a shift so why do we need a shift? So that natural adjustments to climate change can proceed without being restrictive. So that is your fourth option. The Himalayan biogeographic region should be enabled to adapt to climate change smoothly. Okay, so there are no restrictions. It cannot be A, because the reason we are shifting is not because of the exploitation of natural resources. It's because we need to move away from the species habitat focus to an inclusive focus. We want to expand the biogeographic range. That's why we are doing it. Not because of A. It's not because of climate change altering precipitation patterns or any of these reasons. And it's not because the Himalayas are a biodiversity hotspot. The question is, why are we changing the approach, the conservation approach? Answer is D. Did everybody get this? And if you have any doubts, please ask immediately. I'll explain it again, but keep asking. Can't be B or C, no? Those are not the reasons for changing the approach. B and C are mentioned in the passage, but that's not the reason we're shifting our approach. Why are we shifting our approach? It's given from, this is the part where it's given why we are shifting our approach to conservation approaches. Because there's no indication that ecosystem will disappear permanently. The only thing that the passage says is there can be a decrease in ecosystem services. There's no indication in the passage that the ecosystem itself is in danger. Because of that, it cannot be seen. Got it? Hope that's clear. Answer is A. Now, how will it be B? It's A. One only. One only. Okay. Some of it's flora and fauna, not the ecosystem itself. So A is the answer. Okay. Then the third one, what is the most important message conveyed by the passage? So let's leave the options aside. In 2 or 3 words, can you type and tell me what you think this passage is mainly talking about? What is this passage mainly focused on? Second answer is D. This passage is mainly focused on the conservation of plants and animals in the Himalayas. Question number 3 we haven't reached yet. So question number 3, option A says endemism is a characteristic feature of Himalayan region. We don't know that. He's just saying that there are many species that are endemic to Himalayas, but endemism itself, whether it is a characteristic feature, we don't know that. So A is wrong. Option B, conservation efforts should emphasize on biogeographic ranges rather than on some species or habitats. Yes, that is correct. That is the main message conveyed here, because he's saying that we need to shift from species habitat focus to an inclusive focus. So he's mentioned that plants and animals are in danger, and then he gives ways to save them. Okay, conservation of endemic elements assumes a great significance. It becomes very important, is what he's saying. climate change has adverse impact on the Himalayan ecosystem. Yes, that is true. He mentions it, but that's the main message. That's not the main message of this passage. Yes, climate change has an adverse impact, but what is this passage saying? The passage is saying that because climate change has a negative impact, we need to shift our conservation approaches. So that is B. Option D, without Himalayan ecosystem, the life of the communities of uplands and downstream will have no sustenance. This is an extreme statement. He is not saying that they will have no sustenance. He's just saying that, the Himalayas would impact the sustenance of these communities. He's not saying they will have no sustenance. So D is wrong. Correct answer is B. Question number 3, it is B. Then see the 4th question. With reference to the passage, the following assumptions have been made. So remember, assumptions are things that the author believes to be true. So number 1, to maintain natural ecosystems, exploitation of natural resources should be completely avoided. Now, is he saying we should completely avoid their exploitation? Such an extreme opinion is not given in the passage. So 1 is wrong. Second one, not only anthropogenic. Anthropogenic means man-made, but also natural reasons can adversely affect ecosystems. Yes, that is true. The author does believe that, because at the beginning it is given here that the Himalayan ecosystem is highly vulnerable to damage, both due to geological reasons and on account of the stress caused by increased pressure of population and exploitation of natural resources. So these are because of people. So anthropogenic. So the second statement is something that the author does believe. So this is correct. Third one, loss of endemic diversity leads to the extinction of ecosystems. Again, this is extreme. The author does not indicate anywhere that if we lose endemic diversity, it will lead to the extinction of the entire ecosystem. So only the second one. Question 4, the answer is B, 2 only. Somebody is asking for the third question. Third question, your answer is B. Yeah, that's correct. Third is B. Fourth is also B. Both are B. Okay, now your doubts, please. Yes, anthropogenic means related to people. Tone of the passage. Extreme statements will be wrong if they are not supported by the passage. Tone of the passage is analytical. Let's see. He is analyzing it. Yeah, it is analytical. Analytical and also persuasive, because he is giving his opinion also that what we should do. This is the author's opinion. He's giving solutions, right? This is what should we do. So analytical is also fine. Persuasive is also fine. All extreme statements are not wrong. If they are not supported by the passage, then they are wrong. And in almost all the cases, they are not supported by the passage. But just check once whether it is actually supported by the passage. If yes, then it is not wrong. Otherwise, it is wrong. For example, in this passage, they are not talking about the extinction of the ecosystem, right? So it's wrong. Now your passage 3 has 4 questions again. And your passage 4 has 3 questions. 4 questions and 3 questions. So overall, you have 7 questions in passage 3 and 4. We'll do these 2 in one shot. Now we'll test our speed. And these are not that difficult either. Passage 2 was tougher. Any remaining doubts with passages 1 and 2? Any remaining doubts with 1 and 2? If no, we'll proceed. If you're clear, please type clear in the chat box so that I know you're clear. Are you clear? If you have doubts, please tell me. Otherwise, just type clear so that I know you got it. Okay. Even the option is right but not supported by the content. If it is not supported by the content, then how can it be right? Getting it? You're saying even if option is right but not supported by the content, it is not the answer. But if it is not supported by the content, then it can't be right, no? How will it be right? We are only looking at options in context of the passage. In the context of the passage. Actually, whether something is correct or incorrect, that is subjective and that is irrelevant. We just have to answer based on the information that we have. Okay, so if it's not supported by the content, then by definition, it is not correct. Okay, fine. We should not bring our own assumptions into play while solving passages. Now, your next exercise is to solve passages 3 and 4. You have 14 minutes. I'll give you 3-4 minutes of extra time. Please start. You can start. Solve passage 3 and 4. Okay, so has everybody finished passages 3 and 4? Has everyone done it or anyone is still doing it? Passages 3 and 4, all done? Done? Okay, fine. Let's discuss these passages. So it's written that it is often forgotten that globalization is not only about policies on international economic relationships and transactions, but has equally to do with domestic policies of a nation. So he highlights that globalization is also about domestic policies. Okay. Then it says that policy changes necessitated by meeting the internationally set conditions by WTO, etc. That is your domestic policy changes of free trade and investment flows obviously affect domestic producers and investors. So whatever international decisions are taken, they affect domestic producers and investors as well. Then he says, but the basic philosophy underlying globalization emphasizes absolute freedom to markets to determine prices and production and distribution patterns, and view government interventions as processes that create distortions and bring in inefficiency. So globalization believes in giving absolute freedom to markets for determining prices, production patterns, distribution patterns, and the philosophy of globalization does not view government interventions favorably. They view them as processes that create distortions and create a lot of inefficiency. Thus, public enterprises have to be privatized through disinvestments and sales. Sectors and activities hitherto reserved for the public sector, hitherto means till now, reserved for the public sector, have to be opened to the private sector. So this is what needs to be done in line with the philosophy of globalization. And it is said this logic extends to the social services like education and health. So even social services and education should be privatized. I mean, like health and education should be privatized. Any restrictions on the adjustments in workforce by way of retrenchment of workers, so retainment of workers, should also be removed, and exit should be made easier. So it should be made easier for the companies to exit the market by removing any restrictions on closures. And he says that employment and wages should be governed by free play of market forces, as any measure to regulate them can discourage investment and also create inefficiency in production. So we should not try to regulate employment and wages either. So everything should be freed from restrictions. That's what he's saying. And finally, he says above all means most importantly, in line with the overall philosophy of reduction in the role of the state. So overall philosophy, reduction in the role of the state, fiscal reform should be undertaken. So fiscal relates to government income and government expenditure. So reform should be undertaken in that field to have generally low levels of taxation. Okay, so we should have low taxes, and government expenditure should be kept to the minimum to abide by the principle of fiscal prudence. Okay, so government expenditure should also be minimized. Fiscal prudence means to be financially wise. So he believes that government expenditure should be as low as possible, and taxes should also be low. All these are policy actions on the domestic front and are not directly related to the core items of the globalization agenda, namely free international flow of goods and finance. So he reiterates the point that he mentioned at the beginning, that international policy also has an impact on the domestic policies of a nation. So he has concluded by supporting his opinion given at the beginning of the passage. Now, statement 1. According to the passage, under globalization, government interventions are viewed as processes leading to. So leading to what? Option A, distortions and inefficiency in the economy. Yes, exactly. That's what is given in the passage. It is not viewed favorably. So cannot be optimum use of resources, cannot be more profitability to industries, and definitely cannot be free play of market forces with regard to the industries. So must be A, distortions and inefficiency in the economy. I hope that is clear. Everybody got A. It's given here. Distortions and bring in inefficiency. Then the second question, according to the passage, the basic philosophy of globalization is to. So globalization believes in giving freedom to what? Freedom to markets or freedom to producers? Yes, so disinvestment by the government means investment by private sector. When the government disinvests, who invests? Who is the government selling to? Private players. So it's the same thing. Disinvestment by government equal to investment by private companies. Got it? Okay, fine. So freedom is to be given to markets, right? So the only option that matches that is option C. Give absolute freedom to markets to determine prices, production, and employment. That's the only option that talks about giving freedom to markets. None of the others do that. So C is the answer. I hope you got C. For question number 2, did you get C? Yeah? Okay, fine. Then the third question. According to the passage, which of the following are necessary for ensuring globalization? 1 is correct, privatization of public enterprises. 2 is wrong, because they believe in reducing role of the government. See, it's given here, government expenditure should be kept to the minimum. So it can't be expansionary policy. So this is wrong. So 1 is right, 2 is wrong. Then 3, free play of market forces to determine wages and employment. Yes, correct. And number 4, privatization of social services like education and health. Again, correct. So 1, 3, and 4. Answer is C. Did everybody get C for question 3? Everyone got C for question 3? Okay, that's great. And the last question, according to the passage, in the process of globalization, the state should have reducing role. B, reducing role. It is given here. Reduction in the role of the state. So reducing role. So 4th is B. Any doubt with this passage? Do you have any doubt with this? Are you clear? Please ask me if you have any doubts. No doubts? Okay. Then passage 4. It says, in recent times, India has grown fast, not only compared to its own past, but also in comparison with other nations. But there cannot be any room for complacency. Complacency means satisfaction. So there cannot be any room for satisfaction, because it is possible for the Indian economy to develop even faster and also to spread the benefits of this growth more widely than has been done thus far. Okay. So we have grown fast even compared to other nations, but we can't be complacent. We can't become satisfied. We need to work harder. We need to develop faster and spread the benefits to more people. Before going into details of the kinds of microstructural changes that we need to conceptualize means understand and then proceed to implement. Micro means small. So the minute structural changes that we need to make, it is worthwhile elaborating on the idea of inclusive growth that constitutes the defining concept behind this government's various economic policies and decisions. So he says that this government's policies and decisions are based on the concept of inclusive growth. He says a nation interested in inclusive growth views the same growth differently, depending on whether the gains of the growth are heaped primarily on a small segment or shared widely by the population. So if only a few people benefit from the growth, then it is viewed differently. If everybody benefits from the growth, then it is viewed differently. The latter is cause for celebration, but not the former. So if many people enjoy the benefits of the growth, then it is a cause for celebration. But if only a few people benefit, then there is no need to celebrate because of it. In other words, growth must not be treated as an end in itself, but as an instrument for spreading prosperity to all. India's own past experience, and end by itself, not end by itself, and in itself, which means it should not be treated as a goal. An end in this is a goal. It should not be treated as a growth, as a goal in itself. So growth is not the goal. It is just an instrument to spread prosperity to everybody. India's own past experience and the experience of other nations suggests that growth is necessary for eradicating poverty, but it is not a sufficient condition. So we need growth, but growth itself is not enough. In other words, policies for promoting growth need to be complemented. Complemented means supported with policies to ensure that more and more people join in the growth process, and further that there are mechanisms in place to redistribute some of the gains to those who are unable to partake in the market process. So we have to have some mechanism by which we are able to give some of the benefits to those people who are unable to partake. Partake means participate in the market process and hence get left behind. So those who are not able to contribute to the economy, even they should get some of the benefits. And finally, he says a simple way of giving this idea of inclusive growth a sharper form. Sharper form means a better definition, is to measure a nation's progress in terms of the progress of its poorest segment. So we should measure our progress in terms of the poorest segment, that is, for instance, the bottom 20% of the population. So he's defined it here. We should see the progress of the bottom 20%. He says one could measure the per capita income of the bottom quintile. Per capita is per person income. Quintile is 1/5, that is 20%, and also calculate the growth rate of income. So you can do these two things and evaluate our economic success in terms of these measures that pertain to the poorest segment. So if you can calculate the per capita income and the growth rate of income, you will get an idea about our economic success based on these parameters. This approach is attractive because it does not ignore growth like some of the older heterodox criteria did. Okay. Now, heterodox means unconventional, not in line with the accepted beliefs. So this does not ignore growth like some of the older heterodox criteria did. It simply looks at the growth of income of the poorest sections of the population. Okay. It also ensures that those who are outside of the bottom quintile, that is the top 80%, they do not get ignored. Because if that were done, if those people got ignored, then those people would in all likelihood drop down into the bottom quintile. So they will automatically become a part of the bottom 20% and so would automatically become a direct target of our policies. So he's explaining how nobody will be ignored by following inclusive growth. Hence, the criterion being suggested here, criterion is singular for criteria, is a statistical summing up of the idea of inclusive growth. So understand inclusive growth as a statistic. He has defined it as the bottom 20% of the population, which in turn leads to two corollaries. You remember what a corollary is? We discussed in the first class in the previous session. Can anybody recall what is a corollary? Can anyone recall what's a corollary? Nobody? Do you remember? It's a conclusion. Okay, corollary is a conclusion. Conclusion leads to two conclusions. Number one, to which that India must strive to achieve high growth. And number two, that we must work to ensure that the weakest segments benefit from the growth. So that's the meaning of this. The author says that the government's policies are focused on inclusive growth. I hope you're able to understand that. And now we come to the question. So this passage has three questions. Number one, the author's central focus is on. So what is the main focus of the author? Option A, applauding India's economic growth, not only against its own past performance, but against other nations. The focus is not on applauding the growth. The focus is on inclusive growth. Okay, so A is wrong. Option B, emphasizing the need for economic growth, which is the sole determinant. The problem is with the word sole determinant of a country's prosperity. So B is wrong. It's not the sole determinant. They are focused on inclusive growth. Option C, emphasizing inclusive growth, where gains of growth are shared widely by the population. Yes, this is exactly what he's saying. Option D, emphasizing high growth. No, he's not emphasizing high growth. He's emphasizing inclusive growth. So the answer is C. Okay. I hope you got option C. Central focus. Ask yourself what's the main reason for writing this passage. And the option that matches your question, that what's the main reason, that will become your answer. The central idea is C. Second one, the author supports policies which will help. This you can directly match the information given in the passage. He supports policies that will focus on the weakest segments of the society. Yeah. So cannot be A, it's not an economic growth. Cannot be B, better distribution of incomes. The problem is with the word irrespective. It's not irrespective of rate of growth. It's not C either. He is not saying that develop economic growth and redistribute economic gains. He's just saying redistribute some of them. See over here, he's just saying there should be mechanisms in place to redistribute some of the gains. Just give them some of the gains so that they don't get left behind. He's not saying that we have to go ahead and redistribute the gains. No. Correct answer is D. Put an emphasis on the development of the poorest segments of society. So D is the answer. The entire last paragraph talks about it. Focus on the bottom quintile. I hope you got it. Answer is D. For those of you who got C, it's wrong because he's not telling us to redistribute the gains. He's only telling us to redistribute some of the gains. Check with the passage. So C is wrong. Is everyone clear? Hope everyone's clear. And then the third one, according to the author, India's economy has grown, but there's no complacency as. Number one, growth eradicates poverty. He has not given this anywhere that growth eradicates poverty. Second one, growth has resulted in prosperity for all. He has not indicated that everybody is already prosperous. He's saying we need to strive towards it. So neither one nor two is correct. Correct answer is D. Neither one nor two. Okay, we are not already prosperous. We have to strive towards it. So D is the answer. Okay. So doubts, please. These two, we went a little faster. So you have solved 15 questions. How many did you get correct? In 15 questions, how many were right? You want me to tell the tone of this passage? Okay, let me see. So this is analytical. An analytical passage. (12 by 15). Okay, fine. How many did you get correct? You can just send me a text, direct message and tell me. Okay, that's great. That's good. And are you clear with all the questions? I hope you're clear. Okay, I hope it's clear though. Whatever we discussed, it's clear. 2 and 3 on the tones. Okay. Passage 3. These are all analytical passages. 3 is also analytical. 2 analytical / persuasive, because analysis is done and opinion is given in all these passages. CSAT, you'll have mostly analytical passages, or in some passages opinions will be given, so they will become persuasive if you have that option. Question 2 in passage 1. A. Rapid growth of nuclear weapons in Russia. Somebody had messaged, sorry, I think I missed him. Please tell options for 3A. 3A, you mean the third passage? Is that what you're asking for? Are you asking for third passage? Which question? Third passage, which question? First one. It is A. It's given directly in the passage. It's A. Okay. Is that you asking for this one only? Got it? Okay. Yeah, you can skip one question. Each question is individual. Each question has 2.5 marks. You can skip as many questions as you want. You can attempt as many as you want. If a passage is 3 questions, you can very well answer 2. If you're not getting the third one, you can leave it. Each question is independent. That is true for all questions. Math, reasoning, and verbal. Each question is independent. Okay. So for example, if you get a circular arrangement question in reasoning and there are 4 questions, you know only 3, you can leave the 4th one. It doesn't matter. You'll get the marks for the 3 questions that you attempted. Okay, fine guys. So that brings us to the end of part 1 today. Part 2 will be on the other side of the break. Please go for a break. Take a 15-minute break. Take a 15-minute break. 15 minutes are enough? Is it sufficient? 15 minutes? Yeah, okay, go ahead. Class resumes at 11:10. Okay, class resumes at 11:10 a.m. Please go take a break and come back. We'll start with this. Class material 4. Okay, for passage 3, I'll tell you the answers. Passage 3, first answer is A. Second answer is C. Give absolute freedom to markets. Third answer is C. 1, 3, and 4. Third is C. 1, 3, and 4. Fourth answer is B. Reducing rule. Okay. Fine. Take a break. Be back by 11:10. Okay, so break time is over. Let's start this class material 4. Everyone back? Please type in the chat box, I'm back. If you're back, we'll begin this particular. Okay, guys, are you back from your break? Can we start? Okay, fine. Sounds good. Let's start. Now see, this one has 5 passages. Passage 1 is a slightly short one, and it just has 2 questions. Questions are also fairly straightforward. Second one is a difficult passage, and it has 3 questions. Okay, so the first 2 passages combined have 5 questions. So we're going to do these first, and then the passages 3, 4, and 5 we'll do one at a time. So first of all, you have to do now. I hope you have taken notes when I explained the previous passages to you, how to analyze the passages, how to eliminate options. Okay, so how to eliminate? Well, we should eliminate all irrelevant options, options that are extreme as long as they're not supported by the passage, and then match the information in the passage. Whichever one is doubtful, eliminate that option. So, and before all that, you have to read the passage in detail. So now in this one, you have to solve passages 1 and 2, and you will have 10 minutes to do this. Okay, because there are 5 questions, so 10 minutes are sufficient. Maybe 1 or 2 minutes extra, but not more than that. Okay, so one by one we will solve these 2 together, then 3, 4, and 5 we will solve individually. So I hope you are ready, and I'm going to play this now, the timer. So yeah, you have to solve passages 1 and 2. I'm putting a 10-minute timer, and you can begin. Please start, solve passages 1 and 2. Then we will discuss it and do doubt solving. Okay, so I hope everybody has finished these two passages. Now we are going to discuss them. So your passage 1, the passage is that it is easy for the government to control state-owned companies through nods and winks. Through nods and winks means through indirect means. So what really needs to be done as the first step is to put petrol pricing on a transparent formula. So first of all, we need to make petrol pricing transparent. He says if the price of crude is X and the exchange rate Y, then every month of fortnight, a fortnight is a period of 2 weeks, the government announces a maximum price of petrol, which anybody can work out from the X and Y. So this is step number 1. Every month or every 2 weeks, government will announce a maximum price of petrol. The rule has to be worked out to make sure that the oil marketing can in general cover their costs. So the companies that market the oil, they should be able to recover their investment, recover their cost. So this will mean that if one company can innovate and cut costs, it will make greater profits because the price is fixed. So if you can reduce your cost, then you can make more profit. Hence, so because of this, firms will be more prone to innovate. Prone means more likely to. They will be, prone means likely. They'll be more prone to innovate and be efficient under this system. And he says once the rule is announced, so this rule of fixed price of petrol, there should be no interference by the government. If this is done for a while, that means there's no interference by the government. Private companies will re-enter this market. It means private companies have left the market and now they may come back again if this petrol pricing change is done. And once a sufficient number of them are in the fray, a fray is a fight. Fight in this sense means competition. They're in the competition. We can remove the rule-based pricing and leave it truly to the market. So once we have enough companies, then we can just leave it to the market. Subject to, of course, the usual relations of antitrust and other competition laws. So this will, of course, be subject to antitrust laws, competition laws, all those things will be there. So this is a suggestion that the author is giving to make the oil marketing industry more competitive or to improve it in a way. So consider the following statements. According to the passage, an oil company can make greater profits if a transparent formula for petrol pricing is announced every fortnight or month by. So how will they make these greater profits? So see the reasons that are given over here. Innovate and cut cost. It will make greater profits. So 2 and 3 are correct. Undertaking innovation and cutting costs. There is no indication of promoting sales anywhere. And there is no indication of selling equity shares at higher prices either. So the answer is B, 2 and 3. Okay, first question, the answer is B, 2 and 3. I hope you got that. It is B, 2 and 3. Okay. Then see the second one. Consider the following statements. According to the passage, private oil companies re-enter the oil producing market if. So when will they re-enter? Number 1, a transparent rule-based petrol pricing exists. Yes, this is correct. It's given over here. If you see, petrol pricing is put petrol pricing on a transparent formula. So yes, that is given. Second one, there is no government interference in the oil producing market. That's also true. It's given here. There should be no interference by the government once the rule is announced. Third one, subsidies are given by the government. Well, there's no mention of any subsidies anywhere in this passage. Or the fourth statement, regulations of antitrust are removed. They're not saying that we should remove the regulations of antitrust. What's mentioned is subject to antitrust and other competition laws. So subject to antitrust, not removal of antitrust. Okay. So 1 and 2. 1 and 2. The answer is option A. 1 and 2. Then let's come to passage 2. Many nations now place their faith in capitalism and governments choose it as the strategy to create wealth for the people. Okay, before that, do you have any doubts with this? Do you have any doubts with the first passage? On to the second one. If you don't have doubts, okay, fine, no doubts. Okay. If you have any doubts, please feel free to ask. Tone would be, these are all analytical / persuasive passages. And you can also say that this is an optimistic passage because he gives a positive outlook for the future. He's giving you suggestions to improve it, and he's saying how these changes will improve the market. So, any of those. Then see this passage 2. Many nations now place their faith in capitalism and governments choose it as a strategy to create wealth for their people. Okay. Now this passage was not very difficult, but the questions were tricky. So let's analyze this. So governments are using capitalism to create wealth for their people. The spectacular economic growth seen in Brazil, China, and India after the liberalization of their economies is proof of its enormous potential and success. Okay, so capitalism has a lot of potential and it has been successful, and this has been witnessed in Brazil, China, and India. However, he says the global banking crisis and the economic recession have left many bewildered. Bewildered means very confused. It is mentioned here that the debates tend to focus on free market operations and forces. The debates about why this global banking crisis and economic recession happened, they tend to focus on free market operations and forces, their efficiency, and their ability for self-correction. So these three reasons are mainly focused upon. Issues of justice, integrity, and honesty are rarely elaborated to highlight the failure of the global banking system. So nobody is talking about these issues. Justice, integrity, and honesty. That these might also be the reasons for the failure of the banking system. The apologists of the system. So apologist is a supporter or a defender. The defenders of the system, which system? Capitalism. They continue to justify the success of capitalism and argue that the recent crisis was a blip. A blip is a minor failure. So they argue that it was a blip. Their arguments betray an ideological bias with the assumptions that an unregulated market is fair and competent. So the arguments of these apologists, in this case, Betray means to show. They show an ideological bias with the assumptions that an unregulated market, unregulated means without any government interference, is fair and competent. So that is these apologists. They believe that an unregulated market is fair and competent, and that the exercise of private greed will be in the larger public interest. Okay, this is what they believe. Few recognize, so hardly anybody recognizes the bi-directional relationship, so the two-way relationship between capitalism and greed, that each reinforces the other. To reinforce means to strengthen, that each strengthens the other. Surely a more honest conceptualization, okay, conceptualization means understanding of the conflicts of interest among the rich and powerful players who have benefited from the system, their biases and ideology is needed. So he's saying we need a better understanding of the conflicts of interest faced by the rich and powerful people who have gained from capitalism, what their biases are. Bias is your internal beliefs, your assumptions. So what their assumptions are, and what their mindset is. So what is their ideology? We need to understand these things. And he concludes by saying the focus on the wealth creation should also highlight the resultant gross inequity. So we should not ignore the inequality. So this is the meaning of your passage. Now we come to the questions. Before that, your passage 1, question 2, answer is A. Okay, 1 and 2. These two, 1 and 2. A is the answer. 3 and 4 are irrelevant, not mentioned in the passage, so can't be seen. So A is the answer. Okay, now come to the questions for this passage. Number 1, the apologists of the free market system, according to the passage, believe in. So what do these apologists or defenders of capitalism believe in? Option A, market without control by government authorities. This is correct, because over here it is given their arguments. Who is this there? The apologists. So their arguments betray or show an ideological bias with the assumptions that an unregulated market is fair and competent. So yes, they believe that an unregulated market is good. So they believe in a market without control by government authorities. So A is correct. B says market without protection by the government. This is irrelevant. There is no mention of any market without government protection. Option C says ability of market to self-correct. This is given as a reason for the debate. This is a reason for the debate on the reasons behind the global banking crisis and economic recession. This is not with respect to the beliefs of the apologists. So C is wrong. And D, market for free goods and services. This is an incorrect interpretation of the words. They don't believe in a market for free goods and services. They believe in a free market. Free market means a market without regulations. Okay, they don't say that you should just distribute goods for free. So the correct answer is A. Did you get this? I think many of you would have gone for C in this, got confused between A and C, or you got A. What were your answers? Did you select C or you went for A? I think many people would have gone for C. So what is, got it correctly? Okay. So what is the learning from this? Don't go by just the keywords. See, okay, this is given in the passage, but read the question. What's your question? Apologists believe in. So what do the apologists believe in? That's not this. This is a reason for debate. Okay. So they believe that an unregulated market is fair and competent. So their belief is in a market without control by government authorities. Is it clear now? If you're clear, please type clear that you got this. First answer is A. Okay, great. Second one, with reference to ideological bias, the passage implies that. So passage is whose opinion? Passage will be the opinion of the apologist or the author. What do you think? Passage implies that means what? It is the opinion of the apologist or the author. Passage implies that is the author's opinion. Passage is written by the author, right? So that is the author's opinion. And does the author agree with the apologist or disagree? Disagree, right? So what is the ideology of the apologists? They believe that an unregulated market is fair and competent. The author disagrees with them. So see, if you read this passage, according to the author, an unregulated market is not fair. It is unfair. So anyway, answer cannot be A or C. It is either B or D. Now, does he believe that it is competent or incompetent? Well, he believes that it is competent, the free market system, because he says that it has enormous potential and it has been successful as well. And does he believe it is biased or unbiased? He believes it is biased. So it cannot be D. Your answer is B. Did you get B for question 2? Free market is not fair but competent. That is the implication in the passage, that it is not fair but it is competent. Okay, so B is the answer. Then the third one, the exercise of private greed will be in the larger public interest from the passage. Okay, now this line refers to what? Number one, refers to the false ideology of capitalism. The author is not indicating that the ideology of capitalism itself is false. So one is wrong. That eliminates options A and C. Second one underlies the righteous claims of free market. So the author does not believe that the claim of the free market is righteous. So that eliminates B as well. So the answer is D, 4 only. Discussing the statements, 3 shows the benevolent face of capitalism. Benevolent means with good intentions. So three is also wrong. 4 is correct. Ignores resultant growth and equity. Because the author says that the exercise of private greed will be in the larger public interest. This is what the apologists believe. And capitalism ignores this inequity. So answer is D, 4 only. I hope you got this. No, not 1. 1 is not true. The author doesn't say that it's a false ideology. He's just saying that it has its own problems which nobody is talking about. Got it? Okay. Any doubts with this? Any further doubts? Further doubts? No doubts? Okay, then we move ahead to passage 3. Now see this passage 3. It talks about, it compares public sector to private sector, and there are 4 questions with this. Okay. So I'll give you 8 minutes to solve it. Okay, please follow the timer. I'm putting a timer. solve passage 3, you have a time limit of 8 minutes. Okay. So just every time, just make sure that you're solving it within the time. Of course, I'll give you a couple of minutes extra at the end, but try to make sure that you're finishing within the allocated time. So now you have to solve passage 3 and you have 8 minutes for it. Okay. Please solve passage 3. Okay, so time is up for passage 3. 8 minutes plus couple of extra minutes as well. Okay, now this was a fairly what is it, fact-based passage, and the questions are also similarly framed. So we just have to understand the information, match the questions and solve it. This passage doesn't really have very tricky questions. So it says that net profits are only 2.2% of their total assets for central public sector undertakings, lower than for the private corporate sector. So he's compared the profits of both and found that for public sector undertakings, as a percentage of their total assets, profits are lower compared to the private sector. While the public sector or the state-led entrepreneurship played an important role in triggering India's industrialization. So in starting India's industrialization, it played an important role. Our evolving development needs comparatively less than satisfactory performance of the public sector enterprises, the maturing of our private sector, a much larger social base now available for expanding entrepreneurship, and the growing institutional capabilities to enforce competition policies would suggest that the time has come to review the role of public sector. So because of all these reasons, now the time has come to review the role of the public sector. So the question is asked that what should the portfolio composition of the government be? Portfolio is a list of your investments. So where should the government be invested? It should not remain static at all times. Okay. And he gives an example. The airline industry works well as a purely private affair. At the opposite end, rural roads whose sparse traffic makes tolling unviable have to be on the balance sheet of the state. So he's given two contrasting examples. On one hand, you have the airline industry, which works perfectly fine, as you know, even if only private companies are there in it. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have rural roads where the traffic is very less, so you can't really collect toll. Tolling is unviable there. Unviable means not feasible, not practical. They have to be on the balance sheet of the state. If the government did not own rural roads, they would not exist. Because you can't make money. Tolling is unviable, so obviously no private company will do it. Similarly, public health capital in our towns and cities will need to come from the public sector. And equally, preservation and improvement of forest cover will have to be a new priority for the public sector assets. So the public health capital has to come from public sector and also forest cover. So three things have been identified where the government needs to be present. One is rural roads, the second is public health, and the third is preservation of the forest cover. Then he says, take the example of steel. With near zero tariffs, India is a globally competitive market for the metal. So we don't have any tariffs or almost zero tariffs. Indian firms export steel into the global market, which demonstrates there is no gap in technology. So we have the latest technology because we are exporting steel into the global market. Indian companies are buying up global steel companies, which shows there is no gap in capital availability. So we have the money as well. Capital is also not a problem. And he's saying that under these conditions, private ownership works best. So, you know, when you have no gap in technology and you have no lack of capital availability, private ownership is fine. Private ownership is clearly desirable in regulated industries, ranging from finance to infrastructure, where a government agency performs the function of regulation and multiple competing firms are located in the private sector. So this is the suggestion of the author, that if the industry is regulated, Government agency should regulate it and private companies should compete. Here, the simple and clean solution, government as the umpire and private sector as the players, is what works best. So he's taken a sport analogy here. Government as the umpire means, what does the umpire do? Umpire makes sure that all the players are following the rules. And private sector as a player. So what do the players do? They compete with each other. So he has just reiterated the point mentioned in the previous sentence using an example from sports. In many of these industries, we have a legacy of government ownership. Legacy means history. So history of government ownership, where productivity tends to be lower, fear of bankruptcy is absent, and the risk of asking for money from the taxpayer is ever present. So though the author is saying that in these kind of industries, it is best to have government agency as a regulator and let the private players compete. But in India, we have a history of the presence of government companies, even in these kind of industries. And these are the drawbacks of having a government company, that the productivity is low, there is no fear of bankruptcy, and taxpayers' money can be used. So that is at risk. There is also the conflict of interest between government as an owner and as a regulator. So naturally, if the government is making the rules and they themselves have a company, there is some conflict of interest. The formulation and implementation of competition policy will be more vigorous, will be better and fair if government companies are out of action. So the author is suggesting that government should not have companies in these sectors. Government should just perform the function of a regulator. Okay, so this is the opinion of the author. Now, according to this passage, what are the reasons for saying that the time has come to review the role of the public sector? So let's see. Number one, now public sector has lost its relevance in the industrialization process. This is not correct. The passage is only saying that now the time has come to review the role of public sector. It is not indicated anywhere that the public sector has lost its relevance. So one is wrong, and with that we can eliminate option A and we can eliminate option D. Second one we know obviously must be correct because it's in both the options. So second one, public sector does not perform satisfactorily. That is correct. If you see the passage, it is given here that less than satisfactory performance of the public sector enterprises. Okay. And then third one, entrepreneurship in private sector is expanding. That is also given. See over here. A much larger social base now available for expanding entrepreneurship. And fourth one, effective competition policies are available now. That is also correct. You see the first paragraph. The growing institutional capabilities to enforce competition policies. So yes, these are correct. 2, 3 and 4 are correct. The answer is C. First question, the answer is C. I hope you got that. Okay, first question, C is the answer. Okay, that's good. Then second question, according to the passage, rural roads should be in the domain of public sector only. Why? Okay. So why should they be in the domain of only the public sector? Option A, rural development work is the domain of government only. Now see, in this case, nobody has stopped private companies from doing it. He is not mentioning that private companies are not allowed to do it. What he is saying is they have to be on the balance sheet of the government. And what is the reason given? If the government did not own rural roads, they would not exist. So no private company would take the effort of doing this because you can't make money. Tolling is unviable. So A is wrong. The passage does not indicate that rural development work is only the government's domain. Option B, private sector cannot have monetary gains in this. Yes, Because he's saying, right, that tolling is unviable. So B is correct. Option C, government takes money from taxpayers and hence it is the responsibility of government only. This is not indicated anywhere in the passage. So C is wrong. Option D, private sector need not have any social responsibility. The author is not saying that private sector is free from any social responsibilities. So this is also not correct. It is irrelevant. So D is also wrong. The correct answer is B, that private sector cannot have monetary gains in this. Okay, B is the answer. I hope it is clear. Then the third question, the portfolio composition of the government refers to option A, public sector assets quality. Now, if you see, there is no mention of any quality of public sector assets in this passage. So A is wrong. Option B, investment in liquid assets. Again, this is irrelevant to the passage. Option C, mix of government investment in different industrial sectors. So yes, the passage does talk about the different industries where the government should be present and the industries where the government should not be there. So C is correct. Option D, buying return on investment yielding capital assets. This is also irrelevant. The passage does not talk about any return on investment yielding capital assets. So the answer should be C. For question 3, C should be the answer. I hope you got that. Got it? Okay. And the fourth one, the author prefers government as the umpire and private sector as players because option A, government prescribes norms for fair play by the private sector. That is correct. It's given here in the passage. The government performs the function of regulation and multiple competing firms are located in the private sector. Option B, government is the ultimate in policy formulation. There is no indication in the passage that government is the ultimate, means the best in policy formulation. So that is wrong. Then option C, government has no control over private sector players. The author is not saying that government does not have any control. He's saying that government should have control. He's saying government should be the umpire and private companies should be the players. So C is wrong. And option D is wrong, that none of the statements in this context is correct because A is correct. So the fourth answer is A. Are you clear with this? Everybody got it? Fourth answer is A. Did everybody get the answers? And if you did not get them, then have you gotten them now? I hope it is clear to everyone. Portfolio is a list of your investments. The total of your investments is called your portfolio. Fourth statement is A. Answer is A. Okay. Now passages 4 and 5 have a combined total of 6 questions. Okay. You have to solve these passages. 4 and 5. 6 questions. You will have a time limit of 12 minutes. I will give you 2-3 minutes of extra time as well. So you have to solve passages 4 and 5 now. This is the final exercise for the day. Then we will discuss these passages and we will end after doubt solving. So You have 12 minutes, extendable by 3 to 4 minutes. Please start solving passages 4 and 5. You can begin now. Okay, so has everybody finished solving these passages 4 and 5? Everyone's done? 4 and 5. Shall we start reviewing? Anybody who's still doing it, or is everyone done? You can type done if you have finished. If you want another 2 minutes, I'll give you another 2 minutes. If everyone's done, we can start. Okay, fine. What about other students? Has everybody finished it? Okay, that sounds good. So let's discuss passages 4 and 5. So now this one, if you see passage 4, the passage says that a diversity of natural assets will be needed to cope with climate change and ensure productive agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. Okay. So if you want to ensure the survival, the productivity in these three fields, agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, we will need different types of natural assets, okay, in order to fight with the climate change. For example, crop varieties are needed that perform well under drought, heat, and enhanced CO2, which is carbon dioxide. But the private sector and farmer-led process of choosing crops favors homogeneity adapted to past or current conditions. So the process of selecting crops, which is led by the private sector and the farmers, the process of choosing crops, it favors homogeneity. So growing the same kind of crops, adapted to past or current conditions, and not varieties capable of producing consistently high yields in warmer, wetter, or drier conditions. So we are not choosing crops, or rather the farmers are, and the private sector, they're not choosing crops that are suited to these conditions, that will give high yields in these unfavorable circumstances. They are choosing crops that are adapted to the past conditions or current conditions. Favor homogeneity. Homogeneity means they're choosing the same kind of crops. Then he gives a suggestion that accelerated breeding programs are needed to conserve a wider pool of genetic resources of existing crops, breeds, and their wild relatives. So we need to breed them fast to conserve them. Relatively intact ecosystems such as forested catchments, mangroves, wetlands can buffer the impact of climate change. Buffer means delay. So these ecosystems, he's given 3 examples: forested catchments, mangroves, and wetlands. They can delay the impact of climate change. Okay. Under a changing climate, these ecosystems are themselves at risk, and management approaches will need to be more proactive and adaptive. To be proactive means to take steps before a situation arises. You cannot be reactive. Connections between natural areas such as migration corridors may be needed to facilitate species movements to keep up with the change in climate. Okay. So he's highlighting the importance of migration corridors. We may need them if we want to facilitate the movement of species, so that these species can use the corridors and go and live wherever it is suitable for them. And this is important because of the rapid rate of climate change. So now there are only 2 questions with this passage. First one, with reference to the above passage, which of the following would assist us in coping with climate change? So you just, match the options with the passage, see whichever ones are given, and you choose them. Number 1, conservation of natural water sources. So what do you think? Is it given? Conservation of natural water sources. Yes or no? Is it given? It is given. See this? Forest, a catchment is an area to conserve water, mangroves and wetlands as well. So these are the natural water sources. So yes, first one is correct. Now because first one is correct, option C is gone. Conservation of wider gene pool. Conservation of wider gene pool. See this? Accelerated breeding programs are needed to conserve a wider pool of genetic resources. So yes, 2 is also correct. So 1 and 2 both are correct. Then 3, existing crop management practices. Now the existing practices, that is these practices, these are suitable or unsuitable? These are suitable or unsuitable? What is given in the passage? They are unsuitable, right? Because they favor homogeneity adapted to past conditions or current conditions. Yeah, it needs to change. They are not choosing varieties that produce consistently high yields in warmer, wetter or drier conditions. So 3 is wrong. And 4th, migration corridors. This is also given over here. Migration corridors may be needed to facilitate species movements to keep up with the change in climate. So 1, 2 and 4. The correct answer is option B. I hope you got this. B is the correct answer. Okay, option B is the correct answer. Then see the second question. With reference to the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Okay, so what does the author believe? Number 1, diversification of livelihoods acts as a coping strategy for climate change. So do you think this assumption is valid or invalid? What do you think? Does the author believe this? Valid assumption or invalid assumption? Valid? It is valid. See, assumption is something the author believes to be true. So what is he saying? He's saying we need to protect agriculture, forestry and fisheries. Why? To cope with climate change. How? By having a diversity of natural assets. So does he believe that a diversification of livelihoods, that is your agriculture, forestry and fisheries, will help us in fighting climate change? Yes, exactly. That's what he believes. So the first assumption is valid. Okay, first assumption is valid. Second assumption, adoption of monocropping practice leads to the extinction of plant varieties and their wild relatives. Is there any, so monocropping is the practice of growing only one crop. So does the author indicate monocropping anywhere in this passage? Is monocropping indicated in this passage, practice of growing one crop? Actually, it is not. This homogeneity, it is basically they just choose the same kind of crops that they have been choosing. So there's no direct indication towards homogeneity, towards monocropping over here. And definitely monocropping is not blamed, for the extinction of plant varieties and their wild relatives. So the first assumption is valid, second is invalid. Your answer is A, 1 only. First one, your answer is A, 1 only. I hope it is clear to everybody. If it is clear, please type clear with both the questions. If you have any doubts, please ask me, because now we'll go ahead and solve the last passage. Clear for both? Okay, fine. And now the last passage. So, no, livelihoods and natural assets are not the same. These are your livelihoods. Agriculture, forestry and fisheries. Okay, these are the livelihoods. So diversification means we need all three: agriculture, forestry and fisheries to fight climate change. Because of that, 1 is valid. And then see this. it is no longer enough for us to talk about providing for universal access to education. Okay, so that's not enough anymore. Making available schooling facilities is an essential prerequisite, so you need it, but is insufficient to ensure that all children attend school and participate in the learning process. Okay, so you need schooling facilities, but it's not sufficient to make sure that children attend school and learn. The school may be there, but children may not attend, or they may drop out after a few months. So these problems may arise. He says through school and social mapping, we must address the entire gamut of, and gamut means scope, the entire scope or the entire spectrum of social, economic, cultural, and indeed linguistic and pedagogic issues. Linguistic issues means issues related to use of language, and pedagogy is the method of teaching. So issues related to these things must be addressed. Factors that prevent children from weaker sections and disadvantaged groups, as also girls, from regularly attending and complementing elementary education. So we must make sure that these kind of issues don't stop them from finishing their elementary education. The focus must be on the poorest and most vulnerable, since these groups are the most disempowered and at the greatest risk of violation or denial of their right to education. So this is pretty self-explanatory. We should focus on the poorest and the weakest groups, most vulnerable, most at risk, because they're not empowered, and their right can easily be violated, their right to education. So must make sure that they get the requisite education. The right to education goes beyond free and compulsory education to include quality education for all. So he's focusing on quality. He's saying the right to education is not just about free education and compulsory education. It is about high quality education. Quality is an integral part, important part of the right to education. He says that if the education process lacks quality, children are being denied their right. The right of children to free and compulsory education act lays down means explains that the curriculum should provide for learning through activities, exploration, and discovery. Now, this places an obligation on us to change our perception of children, to change our view of children as passive receivers of knowledge, and to move beyond the convention of using textbooks. So we need to move beyond this idea that, just using textbooks to teach is enough as the basis of examinations. The teaching learning process must become stress-free. So now the suggestions are being given. There should be no stress. And a massive program for curricular reform should be initiated to provide for a child-friendly learning system that is more relevant and empowering. Teacher accountability systems and processes must ensure that children are learning and that their right to learn in a child-friendly environment is not violated. So he's giving all these suggestions that we should have systems to ensure teacher accountability, and the processes, they must ensure that children are learning and their right to learn is not violated. Right to learn in a child-friendly environment is not violated. Testing and evaluation should be redesigned to ensure that these do not force children to struggle between school and tuition centers and bypass childhood. So we should design testing and evaluation such that children don't miss out on their childhood by juggling between school and tuition centers. They should get time to enjoy their childhood. So this is mainly talking about, providing a high quality education to children and ensuring that they learn in a child friendly environment. That is the main focus of this passage. Now, if you see the questions, the first question is, according to the passage, which of the following is of paramount importance under the right to education? Paramount means highest. So paramount importance means highest importance. Number one, sending of children to school by all parents. This is not of paramount importance, because he is saying that that attending school is not enough. 1 minute. Yeah, making available schooling facilities is an essential prerequisite, but it is insufficient to ensure that all children attend school and participate in the learning process. And it also says school may be there, but children may not attend, or even if they attend, they may drop out after a few months. So we have to address these issues. So sending of children to school is not of the highest priority. The priority is to make sure that they get properly educated. Second one, provision of adequate physical infrastructure in schools. This is also not of the highest priority. He is saying that making available schooling facilities is a prerequisite but insufficient. And third one, curricular reforms for developing child-friendly learning systems. Yes, that is true. Because he is saying a massive program for curricular reforms should be initiated to provide for a child-friendly learning system that is more relevant and empowering. So the third one is of paramount importance. So the answer is C, 3 only. Did you get C, 3 only? For this question, did you get C, 3 only? Are you clear with this as well? No doubts? Okay, fine. Second one, with reference to the above passage, the following assumption have been made. Again, assumption is basically the belief of the author. So what does the author think? Number one, the right to education guarantees teachers' accountability for the learning process of children. Do you think this is a valid assumption made by the author? Do you think the author believes that the right to education has guaranteed teachers' accountability? Yes or no? Is this a valid assumption? The correct answer is no, it is not a valid assumption. You see, this is something that he wants to do. If he believes that this is already done, see, if he believes that right to education guarantees teachers' accountability, will he make this kind of a statement that teacher accountability systems and processes must ensure that their learning and that their right to learn is not violated? He's saying this statement because this is a suggestion he's giving. So the right to education act is there, but he says we must ensure this, which means he does not believe that this is already guaranteed. If this was already guaranteed, as is said in the statement, then there is no need to worry. So that is an aim that he wants to pursue. What is an assumption? Assumption is something that you believe to be true. He does not believe this to be true. He says we need to ensure this. So the first one is wrong. Are you able to understand? First one is wrong. This is an aim. This is something that he wants to achieve. It is not something that he already assumes to be true. Similarly, second one, the right to education guarantees 100% enrollment of children in the schools. He does not believe this. This is something he wants to achieve. I'll show you where. The school may be there, but children may not attend. He believes they may not attend. So he does not believe that the right to education guarantees 100% enrollment. This is something that he wants to achieve. So 1 is wrong and 2 is also wrong. Third one, the right to education intends to take full advantage of demographic dividend. As you can see from by elimination, C must be the answer. So this is right because, okay, what is the main focus of the author? Can you say in one word, what is the author mainly focused on? Focus of the passage is on what? Quality education, right? High quality education. high quality education. And you know what is demographic dividend? Do you know the meaning of demographic dividend? Demography is your population, dividend is a benefit. So demographic dividend is another word used for the youth. Young people in a population are also called demographic dividend. So does the right to education intend to take full advantage of the demographic dividend? Yes, correct. Because he is saying we must give them a high quality education. So the right to education intends to maximize their utility, take full advantage of the demographic dividend. So only the third statement is a valid assumption. The answer is 3 only. Option C. Option C is the answer. 3 only. Is it clear? Demographic dividend is the youth. So this right to education focuses on a high quality education. So yes, the author believes that it intends to take full advantage of the demographic dividend to give them a high quality education so that they get the best education and they'll perform. So full advantage of demographic dividend. That's why it is C. Then the third question, according to the passage, which one of the following is critical in bringing quality in education? Critical, okay, critical means important. Option A, ensuring regular attendance of children as well as teachers in school. Now the author has already said that ensuring attendance is not enough. We have to make sure that they get a high quality education. So A is wrong. Option B, giving pecuniary benefits to teachers to motivate them. Pecuniary means monetary. So the author does not say that we have to give them any monetary benefits. Third one, understanding the socio-cultural background of children. This has also not been given any importance in this passage. Option D, inculcating learning through activities and discovery. This has been given. If you see here, curriculum should provide for learning through activities, exploration and discovery. Okay. So the correct answer is option D. For question number 3, it is D. Did you get D for question number 3? Got D? Okay, fine. And finally, what is the essential message in this passage? So in your own words, what do you think? What is the essential message in this passage? What is your opinion? What is the essential message? Quality, right? Focus, correct. I think everybody got this correct. It will be C. The right to free and compulsory education should include quality education for all. It cannot be A, that the right to education now is a fundamental right, because there is no indication anywhere in this passage that it is a fundamental right. So A is wrong. Option B, the right to education enables the children of poor and weaker sections of society to attend schools. So again, if you see, the essential message in this passage is not on the focus is not on attendance. Essential message is not that they should go to school. Essential message is that they should get a good quality of education. And option D, the government as well as parents should ensure that all children attend schools. Again, the same thing. The focus is not on attending school. The focus is on obtaining a high quality education. So the answer is C, that the right to free and compulsory education should include quality education for all. And that's all. Now, do you have doubts? And please calculate how many you got correct. See, they will not use the exact same word. The passage talks about demographic dividend. Demographic dividend is basically young population. So they've used a synonym. Synonyms will be mentioned. Now, out of 16 questions, how many you got correct? Okay, fine. It's fine. It will improve with time. I hope you understood the explanations. So if you notice, you should not use your own assumptions. Okay. They will use synonyms. That will be there. So guys, that's all for today. If you have any doubts, please go ahead and ask me. Okay, accuracy is also fine. What is the answer of passage 4, second question? Passage 4, second question is A, one only. One only. Any other doubts? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I hope what we discussed is clear to you. If you have any doubts, please ask me. And if you don't have doubts, you can log out. Then I'll also end the session after that. And in the next session, we'll do short passages, which form a bulk of your questions nowadays. Now your concepts are clear. Now we can do short passages. Thank you. How many? Passive questions. What's a passive question? You mean to ask passage questions, or do you mean to ask how many questions from reading comprehension? Is that the question? Because I didn't get the meaning of passive questions. Okay. You will get, so the highest till now has been, I think, 36 or 37, and the lowest has been 25 if you take previous year's passages. So you can expect around 30 questions out of 80, 30 questions from passages, around 30 questions. Any other doubts? If no doubts, you can log out, and if doubts, please go ahead and ask.
Thank you, sir.
All clear? Okay. Thank you. I'm exiting the session there.
Okay, sir. Bye, sir.